Hi, I'm Catherine Llewellyn, the host of the podcast. You can find out all about Truth and Transcendence on truthandtranscendence.com. And you can find out all about me on beingspace.world, where you will find my online coaching offering, as well as my UK-based workshops. The Freedom of Spirit workshop for liberation and empowerment, the Pellower Radical Shift in Consciousness workshop for spiritual expansion, and transformational coaching for exploring the mind-body-spirit connection on the expansive path. You can also support the podcast by actually making a donation. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to Truth and Transcendence. You can find all our other episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. Today I'm going to talk about self-discipline and not really self-discipline. The other day I was in a restaurant and my friend was having quite a full and rich dessert. It was an apple and cinnamon cake drowned in vanilla custard. And the lovely man in the restaurant came out with 2 spoons and said, "Is this 1 spoon situation or a 2 spoon situation?" And I said, "Just 1." My friend glanced at me and they both looked at me and raised one eyebrow as if to say, "Why not treat yourself? Have a spoonful of this dessert." And I said, "I really don't fancy any of that dessert." And they both believed that I was exercising self-discipline to not eat any of this dessert. They were actually mistaken about that, because there was no self-discipline involved, because I had absolutely no desire or interest in eating that dessert. Why? Because I have an extremely nourishing diet and I am not craving sweet things as a result, because what I do eat actually nourishes me fully, and there's a balance and satisfaction and fulfillment. So there's no requirement for a sweet dessert. There's no craving for it. There's no wanting it. Now, this interests me as an example of something around self-discipline and around not self-discipline. Often in our lives, we notice that there's something we're doing that we'd like to let go of, or change, or do less of. Stop eating this, let go of that habit. And almost immediately in our culture, the first place that we go is, right, I will have to use willpower to do that. I will have to use self-discipline to do that. Why? Because I want to keep doing that thing. And I also want to stop myself doing it. So what we're doing there is we're setting up an inner battle with ourselves. And the thing with an inner battle is it creates pain of one sort or another. It creates distress and it uses a lot of energy, which as a result very often triggers the very impetus within us that wants to eat the sweet thing, do the wrong habit, smoke the cigarette, whatever it is, sleep with the wrong person, whatever it is, the habit that we're trying to break actually gets reinforced by us trying to fix it through willpower alone or self-discipline alone. Whereas the real answer, in my experience, is rather than doing that, is to find an alternative that fulfills the need that's being met by that particular negative pattern, and find something else which is much more nourishing and much more fulfilling in a real and authentic sense and in a long-term sense, and to bring that into the life. And when we do that, the so-called bad habits and, in some cases, addictions, I think sometimes, can find themselves dropping away because we're no longer feeding them like the ivy that drops off the branch because the water's not reaching the ends of the branch and the leaves on the end of the branch, and the little thready branch wastes away and finally breaks and drops and it's gone. So that sounds all very idealistic. Thank you very much, Catherine. So I'll just get onto a really great nutrition plan, taking that example around physical food nutrition, and switch to that. And then my cravings for, let's say, Jaffa cakes or something I ate when I was in the States, which was muffins that contained in the center a huge blob of butter and also currants within the muffin. And I'm pretty sure there was a large blob of strawberry jam in the center as well. And these were also warm. And they were cooked with a lot of butter also. So they were unutterably delicious. I mean, unutterably delicious. And lo and behold, you'd eat one and you just want another one. Addictive, truly addictive. But actually now, if someone offered me one of those, I wouldn't want it. Or am I lying? Maybe I would want it, but I probably wouldn't eat it because I've completely changed the pattern within me by completely changing the behavior, by finding something that's much more nourishing and balancing. So in the nutrition world, people talk about high quality carbs with slow energy release. What that means is these carbohydrates that you eat release sugar and energy into the body slowly at the rate that the body is equipped to deal with it without spiking and without then crashing. And that's what's healthy for us. That's what works for us. That's what fits with our actual metabolism as it is actually designed. The same applies for all our other behaviors. So in relationship, we don't really flourish when we overstimulate ourselves in relationship. We don't really flourish when we are constantly after very stimulating, high climax sex, for example. I think sometimes when we're very young, we can cope with that for a while. But as we get past that stage, we actually move more into a place where slow build up, steady state orgasming, all of that much more gently paced, but equally powerful, perhaps more powerful lovemaking is much more suitable to our actual system, our physical system, our metabolic system. And therefore, it doesn't create cravings. It creates nourishment and fulfillment. I don't know why I started talking about sex, perhaps because it's just such a good example for this. And this applies in all sorts of other areas. So rather than saying to ourselves, right, I must try and force myself to stop doing X, Y, Z, stop eating this, that, and the other, stop doing these behaviors, stop going to those places, stop mixing with those people, and so on. The first thing to do, having noticed there's an area where we'd like to make a change, is to start exploring and researching what are the needs I'm trying to fulfill when I do that? What is it in me that needs nourishment and attempts to get nourishment by doing that? What is a better way to get that nourishment? And let's explore that. And yes, maybe start to gently ramp down in those areas, but not such that we end up fighting with ourselves and throwing ourselves into a state of desperation when we would just reach out to the pattern that we're familiar with and just reinforce it. So if you think about your life, what are you doing in your life? And what are you eating and who you're spending time with and so forth that is actually not really very fulfilling and nourishing for you, and that could perhaps be fulfilled and nourished in a better way, a more holistic, natural, healthy way for you and your metabolism? And can you kind of hold at the same time, maybe holding in one hand the reality of the things you're doing that aren't very nourishing, and in the other hand, the possibility of finding other ways that might be more nourishing? And can you hold a contextual overview around those two perspectives that says, I'm going to be really gentle with myself. I'm not going to try and drive myself and force myself through willpower and self-discipline. I'm going to actually see about transitioning gently from one to the other by researching and finding and ramping up the more nourishment fulfilling behaviors, nutrition, whatever it may be, and gradually letting the other fall away, perhaps with a little bit of help. And yes, get help from your coach, your supervisor, your whoever, your family, your lover, whoever it might be. Yeah, get help, of course. Join a group. Being in groups is fantastic for this, because being in groups helps equalize and balance out the awful, isolating self-separation of I have to discipline myself, I have to force myself to be different, which is all very self-divisive and energetically draining. So yeah, by all means, get assistance and support with whatever shift you're trying to make. But maybe do it without emphasizing the self-discipline quite so much, and emphasizing the non-self-discipline path of self-nourishment. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Have a fantastic, nourishing and fulfilling week, and I'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. It really helps if you give a thumbs up, a 5-star rating, a review, and share with your friends. If you're looking for transformational coaching or an intensive transformational weekend workshop experience, I can help with that. You can actually help the show by making a donation. Until next time, take care.